Why wait for the Project Q when you can get it right now? And here's a potential solution to the overheating PS5 issue. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is the weekend video here on the channel. And you know, for these weekend videos, I like to do something different once in a while. And so today I thought I'd tell you about an accessory that essentially gives you the same experience that you're going to get with the Project Q whenever it's available in 2023 or 2024. So what I'm talking about today is the Backbone 1 attachment for the iPhone and Android. So when you go to the store, this thing is $100 and you have to get the one that's for your phone. So if you have an iPhone, you need to make sure you get the iOS compatible one. And if you have an Android phone, there's one available there as well. It just uses USB-C. There's a lot of different controller attachments for phones these days. They've been coming out for a few years now. I'd say the two biggest ones that people use are the Backbone 1 and the Razer Kishi. But despite that, the reason I ended up going for the Backbone 1 over the Razer Kishi is because they have a PlayStation branded edition of this controller now, which looks really cool. It's all white all the way around, and then the difference is between this and the regular or Xbox version, if you want to call it that, is that it has PlayStation's buttons. So if you look at the face buttons on the thing, it'll have a cross, a circle, a triangle, and a square instead of A, B, X, Y. And that was enough for me to want to maybe consider picking this thing up. I never really had a reason to until I thought of doing this video. And from a quality standpoint, I really have no issues with this thing. I'll explain how I've been using it almost every day a little bit later. But yeah, from a hardware perspective, it looks and feels exactly the same as the first day I got it. The buttons are super tactile and they almost have like a mouse click to them. Like, they're very clicky buttons. I like the D-pad a lot. It's also very clicky. The triggers have great travel and they have nice resistance. And I've heard some people say, like my friend Brett Metlock over at Destructoid, he was saying that his right trigger has kind of lost its springiness in the 9 months or so that he used his, but mine, after a couple months of using it pretty much every day, has remained very good. So maybe they updated that in this new PlayStation model. I'm not sure. Maybe he just got a dud. It also has charging pass-through, which I think is really cool. Like on the right side on the iPhone version, you can just plug a lightning cable into it and you'll be able to charge your phone through the actual controller. And the most like underrated feature I would say on this controller is the fact that it has a headphone jack slot, because of course the iPhone hasn't had a headphone jack in a really long time. So if you're someone like me who likes using wired headphones on their Steam Deck or their ROG Ally, or even sometimes their DualSense controller when they don't really want to charge their in-zone headset, you're going to be really happy knowing that you have a little headphone jack on the left side of the controller. I do have one nitpick with the hardware though, and that's that this is really a cosmetic overhaul of what they've already made. Like, outside of having the PlayStation buttons, you're not really going to see anything else that makes it look and feel like PlayStation. And that's kind of a bummer, because the one thing that they omitted that I really would have liked to see is symmetrical sticks on the controller. Now, of course, they probably are indeed this thing and said because of the ergonomics of it, it doesn't make sense to reverse the stick and the D-pad on the left side of the controller. But still, if you're making a PlayStation branded controller, I feel like the trademark of the DualShock going all the way up to the DualSense is the fact that the sticks are symmetrical on PlayStation. I know some people really like the offset sticks, but I feel like I'm playing on a PS5 when I use this thing because I stream a lot of games from my PS5 to it. So yeah, I have that muscle memory of going down for the stick instead of up. I mean, can you really blame me? I play everything on the PlayStation 5. Also, I don't really like that this thing hasn't been updated to work with the newest iPhones without an adapter. It does include it in the box, so you just kind of slide it on I think the left side of the controller, but it's kind of hard to get it perfectly symmetrical when you're using that adapter. And I have the iPhone 14 Pro, which is a pretty standard phone, so I feel like that should be maybe the one that's supported. And I don't feel like the chassis on the 14 Pro is that different from the 14. So yeah, it just takes away a little bit from the premium feel that I have to use an adapter. And also, if for some reason your iPhone is too old and the adapter doesn't fit it, you can get a different adapter from Backbone, but you have to go on their website and order it for free. I don't really know why they don't just include multiple adapters in the box. Like, they're already including one and you slot it into the controller. Just stop penny pinching that much and include every adapter that people might need. Oh, and this is like a half serious nitpick, but it's one that I thought was worth bringing up. So if you're playing any games like on your phone, not streaming them from your PlayStation 5, a lot of them will use the Nintendo layout. So like circle would be advanced instead of X, which is annoying, but I guess that would be the same issue if you were playing like on the Xbox version of this, because B would be advanced instead of A, and arguably arguably that's worse because B is red and A comes first, so you want to use A. Regardless, it's annoying that circle is the advanced button for a lot of games, especially the ones I'm playing, which I will talk about in a little bit. But yeah, from a hardware standpoint, I think this thing is pretty much as good as it gets, right? Like, it works with my phone, it stayed durable over time, and I've had no issues with it draining battery or anything like that. The biggest negative for me on this whole thing though is that not only does it have its own proprietary app, but it also has a built-in subscription service that locks away features that the controller can take advantage of unless you pay a monthly fee. Now, if you do buy the iPhone version of this controller, you can download the app and get 3 months free of Backbone Plus, and I just signed up for that and immediately canceled the trial because you also get 3 months of Discord Nitro with it, and I send files on Discord a lot, so I was happy to take that 3-month offer from them. But yeah, it is kind of scummy, if you ask me, to charge people $100 for a controller for a phone that can't be used on anything but your phone. Like, it doesn't work as a regular controller, especially when you consider that the DualSense, which is like the most advanced controller you can buy right now, I'm talking standard controllers, not these adaptive ones or anything like that, it has stuff like adaptive triggers, haptic feedback. Overall, it feels a lot more premium, and the normal price for that thing is $70 and it goes down to $49 all the time. So not only are they charging a premium on top of premium controllers like the DualSense for this Backbone controller, but then they develop features for their app that they lock behind a paywall. Something about that just isn't sitting right with me, but thankfully you don't have to pay for the subscription service to get most of the features of the controller. It just sucks that they're hiding anything they develop for a $100 controller behind a paywall, and I hope they get rid of that in the future, because I can't imagine anyone's paying for this unless they signed up for that 3-month trial and forgot to cancel it like I did. So if you have one of these, make sure you cancel that trial if you don't want to keep the service. Where this thing has kind of been a mixed bag, I would say a 50-50 experience though, is with streaming games from my PlayStation 5. So I actually have 2 Wi-Fi setups going on here in my house. They're both mesh. So the first one is gigabit up and down from AT&T. That works phenomenally. That's what I usually have my PlayStation plugged into. I love it. And then I have a Netgear setup that's like 500 up and down, and that's a Wi-Fi mesh as well. It's just like I cover both halves of my house that way, and I use the faster connection for my gaming PC and my PlayStation 5 and my Apple TV, and everything else I kind of have connect to that other SSID. The unfortunate thing is that despite my PlayStation getting 500 megabits per second up and down when it's connected to my main Wi-Fi network, I couldn't get it not to stutter relentlessly when I was playing games like Death's Door or Diablo 4, and it just got super annoying. So then I had the bright idea to switch it over to my slower network, which is the Netgear network, and then it worked totally fine. So yeah, your mileage is going to vary when you're streaming games from your PS5 to your phone, and from what I can tell, weird things can get in the way, like having an iPad between your phone and your PlayStation 5 and the router can screw things up. Once I got everything working though, I was able to stream Diablo to my phone at 720p 30, and it worked really well. And the issue is I just kind of had to force myself over the past few weeks to use this instead of playing the game on my PlayStation 5 or on my ROG Ally or Steam Deck, because my ROG Ally can run that game at medium settings, 60 FPS at 720p, and that's natively playing on the device. So I'm going to get no latency or any weird issues that I would get over streaming, right? And then with other games like Final Fantasy 16, that's not really a game I want to play in a handheld no matter what. So yeah, for the most part, the only games I really played were Death's Door and Diablo 4. And this isn't going to shock you. All of that kind of gets me worried for the Project Q, right? Like, we've seen the leaks. That thing is essentially the exact same setup as using one of these Backbone controllers with an Android phone. The only difference is it's going to have the haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, which is cool, but the price on that thing is allegedly going to be $300, which sounds absolutely insane. And the operating system it's running is based off of Android, so it's probably going to be using the official Remote Play app. If you do have access to the operating system in the Play Store, I would recommend just writing down PS Play now and buying that as soon as the Project Q comes out, because even with the stuttering, it was stuttering a lot less on Mirror Play than it was on the official PS Remote app. But yeah, this whole situation is just reminding me of the PSP Go. If you haven't heard of that console, it was a PSP that slid up and down, and the catch with it was that it was all digital, and there was nothing really wrong with that, right? Like, I had one and I played a bunch of my games digitally on there, like Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, Gran Turismo. Anyway, that thing failed because while the technology was really cool, like being able to slide up your PSP and download games to it, Wi-Fi wasn't good enough, and it was really just ahead of its time. And when I look at the experience that I've had all month with the Backbone One, I can't imagine it being any different with the Project Q, and it just makes me feel like that thing is A, not really asked for by anyone at this point in time, like the PSP Go wasn't, and B, it's just ahead of its time. Internet isn't good enough, it's not strong enough, and it's not smooth enough to make sure that you're going to get a seamless experience across the board. Like, I only paid $100 for this controller, which I still feel is overpriced, but if I I paid $300 and got the same experience, that thing would have been returned in about 15 minutes. And I saved this for the end because it is mildly embarrassing. So when I bought this controller, I fully intended on returning it back to Best Buy. And the reason I ended up keeping it is because I'm getting married in October. I want to shed a few pounds. I'm down like 10 since I started doing this a couple weeks ago, but every morning I go to the gym and I get on the treadmill, I set it to incline 12, speed 3, and I walk for an hour. So the first few days of that were extremely boring, and the only way I found to remedy my boredom during this is to play Diablo Immortal on my phone, and playing it with this Backbone controller makes it a much more fun experience. And because the story in that game is just a full asset flip of Diablo 3 with a few new areas, I still haven't beaten the story, so I haven't had to pay for anything in that game. And yeah, it's making me lose weight, and I enjoy playing mobile games because I have this controller. So while it's not great for its intended purpose, which is streaming games to my phone from my PlayStation 5, it is helping me lose weight for my wedding, and I think that kind of makes it worth it in the end for me. Obviously, that's a specific use case. Your mileage is definitely going to vary with this thing, but yeah, I thought it was worth bringing up at the end of the video. All right, so you probably heard this news story about Final Fantasy 16 over the past month, where when you would get to a certain point in the game, it would hard crash your PlayStation 5, and the only way to really fix it outside of cleaning out your PlayStation 5 would be to let it cool down, because it was an overheating issue. And basically what would happen to people is their PS5 would crash to the home screen and they'd have to restart the game, and then they would play up to that point, and sometimes it would crash again, and sometimes they'd be able to get past it. But that point in the game was where everyone seemed to be crashing, because that was a point where it was really pushing the PS5 to its limit. And that's worrying for a few reasons. The first one of which is obviously that the PS5 has gotten a few hardware revisions already behind the scenes that weren't even announced, and every single one of those revisions actually reduced the cooling of the system. When the first revision of the PS5 came out, we heard all these news stories that basically said the launch model had overkill cooling, like they did too good of a job and they could afford to kind of reduce it. But then we had the second revision and they reduced it even more, to the point where the internals of the current PS5 are like half the size of a launch model PS5, which obviously reducing the cooling from overkill is like a cost saving measure. I understand that, but is there really a reason to have less cooling ever really with something like this? Wouldn't you just want them to keep including overkill cooling? Like, I don't really care about Sony's bottom line personally on this console that they're already making money on. Like, for one of the first times ever this generation, the console is not being sold at a loss. So yeah, just like cutting the cooling to make a little bit more profit on the console. I don't really understand that philosophy at all. But to be fair, the second revision of the PS5, so the actual like third PS5, since it was the second revision of the original model, that one was running about 20% more efficiently. So you could kind of see why the original revision of the heatsink would have been good in that one, but they chopped it down even more. And it seems like no matter which model you have, whether it's the launch, the first revision, or the second revision, this game can crash your PlayStation 5. So the timing really couldn't be better for this new Kickstarted product. It's called the SCRY, so I'm going to call it the Scary Arctic, and it's a new plug-and-play cooling unit designed to keep your PS5 from overheating. This thing's being advertised as the world's most advanced PS5 cooler, which, like, yeah, I guess you could say that, because I really don't know how many there are, and the ones I've seen on Amazon really look like they come from AliExpress, and they don't look like they actually do all that much. So I feel like the bar of the world's most advanced PS5 cooler is about an inch off the floor, but it is nice to see that on this Kickstarter page. I understand why they want people to have that peace of mind. Another cool thing about it is that it has a pass-through USB port, because you need to power it with your console. So if you snap it on the back of your PS5, plug it into the USB port, it has one built into it that doesn't take away from the ones already on the console. Their goal on Kickstarter is like $700-400, and it concludes on September 7th. I don't think they're going to have any trouble meeting this goal, even without the overheating issues of the PlayStation 5. That's a pretty low goal for something like this, and I feel like people just like buying PS5 accessories. So there's tech-minded people out there who just want to get something new and cool that they can plug into the back of their console. See what I did there? New and cool. I didn't even do that on purpose. And unlike every Kickstarter that I've ever backed, it's not going to take a year or 10 after it actually concludes to start shipping this thing out, because they're saying that even though it concludes on September 7th, this thing will start shipping out around October. So really, all around, it seems like a win-win. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.